a freaky moment. So when I'm doing the interviews of people, it's like I used to be able to edit it because I had the YouTube editor, but that shut that down. So like all the beginnings are always weird because like nobody knows when to start.
That's tight, dude.
Staring at. So I guess I just have to start it up now because I used to just like even if it was an awkward start, it's fine because you just edit out the front. So it looks like started, but whatever. So we well last time we left off talking about this, I was just reviewing the episode. Um talking about like I don't know about like kids burning out early or like, trying to make a name for themselves or try to like, figure out what they want to do early on and the kind of pressures to do so when, presumably we might need a bit more time than that. I don't know. I bet you have a bunch of thoughts on this going back to your
A
childhood.
bunch of uneducated thoughts. Yeah. I mean, I'm not. Well, one thought that comes to mind is that this labeling of kids as having high potential, it's based on like a limited set of things, right? Like there's the standard high school curriculum, and then if you do well in that, then you're considered gifted or high potential or whatever. Then like people make this jump to assume that you're going to do good things in your career, but career, if you go into business, there's a set of skills that aren't being tested in high school or in academia as well. I mean, it's in some ways a little unfair to the kids because there's this big burden of, wow, we expect you to do great things. And then, even if they turn out reasonably well, it's like, oh, I thought you were special. Like what happened, Like, I don't know. That's my first impression when we talk about this topic.
Oh, you mean even the kids who do well in the traditional academic metrics and, so, I mean, there's this whole other side of, kids whose talents lie outside of the realm of what we can test for. But you're saying even the ones who have traditionally gone through school and been quote unquote gifted or whatever, right? Even if they end up having a good job and stuff, people are like, whoa, I expect you to like change the world.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah.
Shoot. Yeah, that's a tough topic. Did I switch my microphone? Does it sound different?
You sound fine to me.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I think my, my thing was not on ATR. Your thing's on ATR?
I think so.
Okay. My thing's on ATR now. Default speakers, whatever. Maybe the Mac Pro's microphones are just amazing, so no one can tell. They're just so amazing.
But Phil, I didn't want to derail the conversation. Like if you had a different thread, you're
no, I didn't have any thread. I was thinking
okay.
about, I didn't have any thread on this. I mean, that was just where we left off. I haven't thought about this stuff in many, many years, right? Like I don't really have, I mean, you have more exposure to K-12 than I do, right? I mean, I have no exposure to K-12 pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, we're in Silicon Valley and there's a lot of pressure. Like a lot of the schools, say in Cupertino or the surrounding areas, it's 10 out of 10 on the, whatever scale is used to measure schools, super good and very competitive too. There's a little bit of a flight away from these schools because they're so competitive. Like parents will put their kids into private schools, not so much because the academic standards are higher, but just to avoid the fight of trying to be at the top at these really competitive schools.
Yeah, I mean that's something that like I mean when I went to college, I mean a bunch of people I knew from the Bay Area were from these really intense schools, right? And I happened to, I feel like we probably grew up in similar suburban, Southern California high schools. Like I didn't grow up in like a super academically intense school or anything. I mean it was fine. It was a good school. I mean it was like in a good school district. It was it was a good area in the suburbs, but I felt like I kind of dodged a bullet on that I didn't actually grow up with a lot of that really high pressure stuff that a lot of my peers at MIT they grew up with, getting into these colleges. So that was sort of eye-opening for me, and being in the Bay Area and stuff, seeing a lot of the kids, and how much they work and everything. It's like, I don't know, my first impression is that like like the baseline of everyone has to work so much, but like you're not really that differentiated, right? It's like everybody has to grind through that same AP history textbook and stuff. And then by the time you like even start college, you're so tired. It's like you're like a car, right? It's like you already put so many miles on your car doing stuff that's not that useful, right? But then you're like, oh man, I'm really exhausted already. And then I gotta like try to do something new.
I guess I don't have as much experience. I went to undergrad UC San Diego. I don't have as much experience with peers who experienced a burnout in high school. So maybe you could tell us like your story, because MIT, I imagine there are more kids in that bucket, right?
I mean, I think it's like I kind of gravitated toward people like more like myself also, I think just naturally. Like, I mean, it was interesting because it was surprising how many people I kind of gravitated toward in college, for which we were the first ones to like go to MIT from our high school in like forever, pretty much. Like I think it was just that people naturally gravitated toward those folks. And like, you know, there are like the people that are super intense from like the really academically intense high schools, you know, these magnet schools throughout the country, and like in these kind of national competitions and stuff. And like, I didn't really talk to those people too much, I guess. Like, I just kind of hung out with the people who were more like myself, I guess. But you kind of see that off in the distance. And then, like, kind of going back to the stuff you were saying earlier, it's like, I don't know, my cynical view on it is that it's not like most people are doing something like amazing, right? Like, people graduate from college, they get a job, they like do stuff, and it's a fine. I mean, it's like, it's not a bad thing, right? But like, but I feel like there was sort of that, you know, you're going to an elite college or graduate school or whatever, there's sort of that, you know, graduation speech kind of sentimental thing. Oh, you have to change the world or whatever, right? But like, I feel like, you know, it's fine. I mean, people like graduate, they get jobs, they do stuff, and it's like, it's all good.
Yeah, I guess part of the sentiment is that if you don't at least attempt to do something good, then it's like, oh, you're wasting a spot from someone more with more ambition could have taken that education and, you know, taken a riskier path. I don't know.
I had to guilt trip people more. Wow. Way to do the laying on the guilt tripping even more.
But yeah, did you what's your experience like? You've talked to people with burnout, or because I don't really have that much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't I mean, this whole like mental health thing is a big deal at a lot of these elite colleges, right? With like, you know, student suicides and depression. I mean, just a lot of stuff. I mean, there's extreme cases and everything, but like, that is a point of conversation of, you know, at these really, you know, top colleges who are really competitive to get into and stuff. And it's a, you know, it's a complex issue. But I don't know. I mean, I don't have a, you know, this is not my domain at all. It's just it's, you know, I mean, my first thought on a lot of that is that like, if the bar of getting in is like, you have to do so much nowadays, it's like, by the time you start or you're already going through college, like you kind of, I just feel like you just put so many miles in your car and you're just like tired in a way. I mean, this is my simplistic view on it. But whereas, you know, if you didn't really need to, you know, I don't know. I just think it's hard. I mean, there are anecdotes on both sides, right? I mean, there are people who came from really intense upbringings and then they kind of carry that momentum forward and they do great things. And then there's people who kind of peter out and stuff. And I don't know. There's people on all sorts of in the space.
But like peter out, I mean, you're still a functioning adult, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's you know, plateauing is fine. I mean, and then there's obviously the extreme cases of where, you know, I would say, I guess like the extreme cases would be like they had, you know, people probably would have been better off going elsewhere, right? Like you would have probably had a better life kind of going elsewhere and not being in kind of a pressure cooking sort of environment.
Does MIT have a lot of pressure?
I didn't really sense that directly, but I felt like it wasn't as much pressure as in, again, I think it's like the, you know, really elite high schools or whatever. It's like just the baseline amount of work that people are doing to get through it is fairly high, right? Okay. So it's not like if people are competitive or, yeah, I never felt like it was like, you know, Harvard Law School or whatever. I mean, whatever people's stereotype is. Like, it never felt like it was like a competition versus anyone else. It was just that everybody was kind of swimming upstream, kind of, right?
Oh, okay.
So I guess the way I would put it is that like, you know, most people end up graduating and being okay, but it's like you have to put in a lot of work to do that. And like you can't just cruise, right?
Oh, so there's no cruising path
Yeah, I don't think there's a cruising path. Like, I mean, you know, people joke that like the, you know, the business and management majors was the cruising path, but still that took a lot of work, right? It's like that's always the running joke that like you would drop into like the business major if you were not feeling it. But that was still like a really hard major because there's all these like math classes and like science. I mean, it wasn't like, it wasn't like, you know, you're just chilling with Shaq or whatever, right? Like it wasn't for student athletes. I mean, it was still really serious, right? But like, yeah, I feel like there was no cruising path.
Okay. So then your experience at MIT versus, say, Stanford grad school, was there like a step down in terms of intensity or?
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to compare, right? Because like, your PhD is so different than undergrad. So yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think daily, yeah, definitely. I mean, it was very different because it was like, you know, yeah, I mean, for, in a really rigorous undergrad curriculum, you're always doing something really concrete, right? I mean,
Mm,
there's just a lot of work to be doing all the time, and you're just kind of grinding it out, and you don't really stop, but you don't have that existential crisis at all, right?
mm.
Like you're taking your 4 classes and like, yeah, I mean, I would say like 4 solid classes a term, it's enough to graduate and stuff. I mean, some people did 5 some terms, but like I thought 5. I never actually did 5. I thought like the 4 was like already like pushing the limits. And if you do one more, it's just like way too much.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, like it's just way too much that, yeah. And like, yeah, I mean, some people toward the end, you could just do like 3 classes or whatever because I mean, unless you want to take more. But like, yeah, I mean, I felt like that normal course load that you would do for like whatever most of the majors, like that was enough work to keep everyone pretty busy, and that was
Mm.
just like a normal course load. That was not like trying to be extraordinary in any way. And yeah, so that I mean, I felt like that was sort of the baseline. So I was thinking like, if you have to do that in high school, even before you even get to rigorous college, you're just like really not feeling it. And then you go to college, oh my god, I have to do 4 more years of this, and then you like go out and get a job. You're like, I just want to chill. I'm like 21, I just want to chill. That's it. I'm done.
I mean, my experience in high school was that I didn't really have that much free time, but I wasn't in overdrive either, right? So I'd be doing, well, the thing was, sitting in class doesn't really take that much mental energy, right? So like sitting in class is kind of your break. And then the homework, like that, depending on your class load, like that could be, especially if you play a sport, maybe outside of school, you only have, say, 3 waking hours, right?
Yeah, the hours. Yeah, especially if you're in a sport or in some extracurricular. Yeah, there's that sheer number of hours you just don't have. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but it wasn't super intense because it's 3 hours of work, but the 7 in school, it's not really work. I mean, depending on the class, some of the classes you're just kind of like resting, and then
kind of chilling. Yeah. I guess like I forget that back when we were half our age, like you have a lot more energy, right? It's like I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can sit somewhere for like 8 hours now and then like go do a bunch of stuff, right? I'm like, my brain would just melt if I had to do that.
Yeah.
Like I would not have the patience for that. I was like, that just, yeah.
That's true, man. Like if you didn't know the high school material and you had to go through high school right now.
Oh man, what a grind. That's like a nightmare, right? Oh, what a grind. Oh, that'd be such a terrible grind. Wow. Just thinking about it.
But Phil, I wanted to ask, like, these kids, I remember when I was 17 and, applying for a major, like, how'd you know what major to pick?
Well, I mean, CS or ECS was like the most popular major at MIT. I think it probably still is. So like that was like kind of what everyone, well, not everyone, but like a lot of people just kind of went into that just because.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always interested in computer stuff growing up. I mean, I was generally interested. I mean, I didn't do a lot of programming, but I took the AP Computer Science course, and I really liked it. And like that was my junior year of college, junior year of high school, and then my senior year, a few of my friends and I, we were like the TAs for the course. We just like took we were just chilling senior year, so we just like took an elective or whatever. I mean, it didn't even count for anything because like we didn't need the units, and we would just like hang out in the lab and just like help the students. And like half the time we were just like playing video games when the teacher was like the teacher was like, I think however how it worked, like because we had these 2-hour class blocks. Like I actually really liked high school because we had these 2-hour blocks. So we had we alternated days of like period 135 and then period 246 and then 135. So we alternated days. So it was really cool because like for these lab classes or hands-on classes, you get 2 hours, which is really cool. So like for like I took this photography class I was really into. You have oh my god, I hit this, my camera's back there, but all my camera gear's back there. I took this photography class I was into, and then like computer science and like people really like the crafts or art classes because you actually like get time to do stuff, right? It was not just like 45 minutes you just shuffle in. So anyways, for this class, like the first hour of 30 minutes, oftentimes like he would be in the lecture hall or whatever, the classroom lecturing, and then he would bring everyone to lab. So then we were all supposed to be working on our like whatever independent study projects, but then we just end up being in the lab just playing video games. It was just amazing. And then then we would hear the teacher and the rest of the class come, all right, gotta shut down the video game before the class comes in. But that was just like really fun, right? And like we had, yeah. So anyways, that was, and I'd always been interested in computer stuff growing up, right? Just like playing with computer stuff, I was always interested. So like that was not a existential crisis for me. Yeah, I mean, I didn't think I want to do like mechanical engineering or something, right? Like that was completely different, or like chemical engineering or something.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so it was not like a big existential angst for me or anything.
Hey, Phil, I want to ask, when you were playing the video games, like looking back, like it's such a fond memory, right? Like no regrets about how you spent your time, right? Like,
oh yeah, it's great. It's great. And it was like, I think by the end of the term, it was like the end of senior year, and like no one cared anymore. We just like play video games during the whole class. Like, nobody cares anymore. Like, who cares?
Did you turn in a project at the end of the class?
Yeah, we did this. Like this was in C++. So we did this like, I forgot what I did. I think I did like this thing because we had this like we had all these. Oh yeah, it was like we had all these we had like a matrix class, right? It was like a 2D matrix like in C++. Like it was part of like the AP computer science library, and they had like a vector class, like a 1D array, and they had like a 2D matrix where you can like put in objects or, numbers and stuff. So I did like this like generalization to like an n-dimensional, basically an n-dimensional tensor, I guess is what it's called. I didn't know back then. Yeah, it was basically an n by n by n by n whatever thing, right? So then you could like do like a 3D like game of life or whatever. I mean, you can't see it, but like you could put in like objects in this 3-dimensional thing or 4-dimensional or whatever, and like it would all kind of work. But yeah, it was basically generalizing the like whatever 2-dimensional matrix class they had to like n dimensions.
So tight.
It sounds kind of tight now I think about it, but like, yeah, I didn't really know what was going on back then. But I was like, and then like, I remember somebody else in the class. I remember because my friend and I talked about this. I forgot, he wasn't a TA. He was like in the class. It was one of our friends, and like for his class project, he made like some like, I don't know, some text-based game thing, right? But we're like. Basically, it was just like 1,000 if statements, right? There wasn't anything in the code. It was just a bunch of if statements. Like, you do this if they said this. There was just basically like a whole story just with a bunch of if statements, just like manually written out. It's great. I don't know why that was so amusing. And then I remember some of the other students, like to like get their test to pass, they would just like put like if statements for like the test cases. So like when the teacher would run it, it would like look like it was passing. But that was just hilarious. Like that's just kind of like the fond memories we had, right? It was just so funny.
It's almost absurd how bad the work is, right? Like
yeah, but that's like what that's what gets people interested, right? And then like between that and playing games in the lab, it was just it was just a good time. And like our teacher was like the AP calculus teacher, so like a lot of these computer science classes, especially back then, were taught by the math teachers, right? Because they didn't have like a dedicated CS teacher. So like he just learned a lot of this stuff. He took this like summer boot camp for AP computer science teachers, and he learned a lot of the stuff kind of along with us. And it was like, yeah, it was like a pretty chill class because it was like an elective. It wasn't like a required course. So like the other cool thing was that because it was an elective, like the people who were there were the ones who kind of like elected to be there, right? It wasn't like Algebra 1 or something where everyone had to go and it was kind of a grind. So, but yeah, that was my tangent on that.
So cool, man. How big was the class?
It was pretty sizable. It was probably like 30 students. I mean, we had a whole computer lab. It was probably like 30. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And what got kids interested in it?
I just think I think it was just, the students who are interested in computer stuff. That was just what they took, right? Because that was what was available. So anyone who was somewhat interested in computer type things would probably take it.
That's cool, man. Yeah.
Yeah, I was really feeling that. But the other class that was really cool in high school was our AP physiology class. So this was 10th grade. So the AP computer science was 11th grade, and then 12th grade I came back for the being the TA. But in 10th grade, we had this AP physiology class where we actually had cadavers, human cadavers in the classroom.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nuts.
Was it freaky or?
It was kind of freaky in the beginning, but then everyone got used to it. It was really unique. So like, the guy who taught it, I mean, he's long retired now. I mean, all these people are like long gone now. But I like for years he was running this program, and I guess he had something with like the local hospitals or something. I don't know what's going on. And then there was like in the back of the classroom, they stored these cadavers that they were donated. And like at first you started with there were just jars of like formaldehyde. There were like organs, like I think there's probably animal organs and then maybe some human organs as well. Like there were actual organs. And then like partway through the class, you work your way up to like you actually see the human cadavers. And that was so like in the beginning part of the class you work with these minks. So like minks are like these like I don't know rodent, I don't know what minks are. They're like rodents, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't actually, my understanding of biology is so bad. Yeah. So we had these like mink cadavers that you had to buy, and like they were wrapped up and stuff. And like then what you would do is you would like it was basically a simulation of like kind of a medical school environment where you would be in class and you would like do these dissections. Like you wear these gloves and stuff. Like you literally wear the gloves, and then you would like have these knives and like you would dissect the stuff, and then you would try to identify the parts and draw it and stuff. It was all really interesting. And then the cadavers, we weren't allowed to handle them ourselves, but like they had TAs. So like the TAs were like the students who took the class in the years before. And these are also high school students. So like the TAs or whatever, they would be in the back like preparing the cadavers. Like they would like put the pins in them so you can be able to identify the parts and stuff. So then you would have these like activities or quizzes where you have to like go and like find where these, whatever muscles or tendons and stuff were. And that was a really interesting class. And I think that was a class that was very impactful on a lot of students actually wanting to go into medicine. And like that was like legit, like for real, really kind of inspiring and everything.
That's a great point, that like the standard curriculum, it doesn't really inspire you to pick a career path, right?
Yeah. Yes, I mean those are the classes that stood out, right? And my photography class was really cool too. But I mean that really developed a lot of my hobbies. And we had this again, like we were a well-resourced school. I mean, we were a good suburban school in like a pretty well-off area. And like we had this photo lab. I mean, like thinking back, it was ridiculous. This is like 97. And like we had and like the photo room was like in the arts building or whatever. And I mean, it wasn't like a fancy school, but like there was like a studio area where there are lights and like you could like, there's like a backdrop so you can take studio pictures. And there's a little classroom area where you can lecture. And then there was like a legit dark room where you go and like you develop your film and like you print the pictures with all the chemicals and stuff. It was really amazing because like most of the class for the photo class was you just do these assignments where you would go and take pictures with the black and white film they give you. And then you would like spend most of the class developing the pictures. Like there wasn't much in terms of lecturing or whatever. It was just like 2-hour periods. And like you just go and do the stuff. And it was really cool.
Nice, dude. Like, do you have opinions on how schools can be better? Because it seems like you have a passion for these classes that give you experience, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I again, of course, most of the school, was about just grinding it out. Yeah, I mean, I just mentioned these as memories. Yeah, I definitely don't. I mean, I'm not like super hippie, right? I don't think that you just have kids play in the sandbox all day, no supervision for 12 years, right? I mean, I think there is a lot of room for structured instruction, but but maybe my compromise is, if every term you have one thing where it's like that would be pretty awesome. Right?
Yeah.
Like you have 4 or 5 classes where you're just grinding it out. I mean, you got to learn your math and you're writing essays and stuff. But if you just have one thing where you're just like doing that. Now I remember this too, because like now it brought me back memories, because that AP computer science TA thing, like in 12th grade, I forgot. Let me try to think. Yes. Okay. So this was one very purposeful decision. It wasn't like, again, a giant deal, but I remember this. So I think, I don't remember if I had the calculator correctly. So, okay. So I think that like in senior year, I had one free slot, right? Because I was taking most of the AP classes or whatever, right? I had one free slot, and like I could have taken like the Spanish 4 AP class, like because I think it was like the 4th year of Spanish. So that would have been one more AP class. Or I could have done this like independent study, whatever, TAing, playing video games thing. I chose to do the latter. And I thought that was really good because like, you know, if you had to just optimize for your GPA, you would take the AP class, right?
Yeah.
Like, you need one more AP class.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm totally not feeling this at all. Right? So I did the other. And also like there's another, I remember this now because you could do the Spanish AP and then there's like the European history AP or whatever. And like, I forgot. Oh, I don't think I could have, I don't forgot what just happened there because I think like there was some schedule conflict or something and like I couldn't do it. Was really dumb. But basically like toward the end of high school, it's like you could eke out one more AP class if you really want. But it's like by that point, it's like who really cares, right? But like the thing is, I feel like for the, you know, going back to the Silicon Valley format, like I feel like if the environment is so intense and students are so competitive, everyone would want to eke that out and you would cut out those electives and stuff. I think that would be bad.
Yeah. Were you valedictorian?
Yes, that's funny story. So my year, they decided to do this brings back all these memories from 2001. So my friend who was like going to be valedictorian or whatever, so in my year, they decided to do the thing where they just like everybody above a certain GPA cutoff got to be valedictorian. So I think there were like 8 or something like that.
Oh.
And like, so they like my friend, like his whole time he was optimizing for that. And then like, yeah. Like I forgot what I mean, I remember this and that. I totally remember this. Yeah, I remember this because like toward the end, it was like, if you really eked out all the GPA stuff, and this is like racing horses or whatever, but like I think I would have been probably down 2 AP courses because I didn't do the Spanish and the European history one. So if you like, I think my friend, like he maxed out every single one possible in the school.
Yeah.
But he got like 1B or something. So it's as though he like only maxed out -1.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody else maxed out was able to max out. Because you had to like, it was like, it took a bunch of intricate planning to do that because of schedule conflict and stuff.
Yeah.
So like you really
you're solving a CSP to like, you know.
Yeah, I know. No, it was like since like 8th grade or something, like since before high school started, because like then like people had to like take some like summer school course in high school 1 year, like so you can get started on your like it's crazy. Like it was insane.
Yeah.
Like and it wasn't even like a really intense score, but there was a few people who did that, I remember. But like yeah, but in the end, no one really cared. They instituted that new rule. Like the last minute, they said that, like in our senior year. Oh, so I guess if they didn't have that rule, I totally forgot. Like, would I have been the salutatorian, like tied for the second or something just by GPA? Maybe, yeah, maybe. Like, I totally forgot, but maybe it was one person valedictorian. Maybe there was going to be like a 2 or 3 way tie for second, and maybe I was one of them. I totally didn't remember.
Yeah. I mean, I do think it's tragic when you over optimize for that stuff, right? Like, and there's a pressure because, you know, over optimization in one camp is like, you know, just following the system in another camp, right? Like it's tough for to draw that line, like, oh, you know, grades are important, but this optimization of trying to squeeze in the APs, like maybe that's overkill, right? It's a tricky thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I totally I mean, but again, you know, like how I was growing up in school and stuff. Oh, now you saw my bookstore cats.
Yeah.
Sure. I gotta raise my seat so you can show it off more. This says bookstores cats. Oh, do you see that? It says life is good down here. See. Life is sweet. Life is sweet. You see the focus. Bookstores, cats, life is sweet. Beautiful. My favorite shirt now.
Where'd you get it?
I saw it at the UCSD bookstore actually, and then I found it on my size online. I just saw the bookstore.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's like this is the sort of thing in life that gives me a lot of pleasure. Right? I saw that in the bookstore, and then I'm like, I gotta get it. So then I looked it up, and I just
Pretty cool, man.
got it online. But yeah, man, but back to the high school thing. Like, it was never like wild, like, oh my god, like what's going on kind of thing. Like, it was never like actually drama, right? But like, I imagine at these more intense schools, it might have been.
Well, your friend must have been mad, right? To spend 4 years of his life kind of optimizing for this thing that in the end doesn't matter.
Yeah, I don't think he actually cared that much in the end. But like, yeah, it was like, yeah, I mean, he did do other stuff beyond. I think it was okay.
Nice, dude.
I think people ended up okay.
Hey, did you start your website when you were in high school?
Yeah. So I actually started that in 8th grade before high school. Like, it was in middle school, but I didn't do much with it then. But yeah, but most of it was in high school, and it actually dovetailed with this photography hobby, because basically throughout high school, my website was just showing photos. And I'm actually send you the link here. Hold on.
Yeah.
Wait, what just happened? I gotta open a new window. All right, let me go to the PG Bovine here. Yeah, so like, I think I did that unboxing video, right? I talked about it.
Yeah.
I talked about the photo thing. So let me show you. I should actually put the photo links in the unboxing video. I probably did. Yeah, so my website was originally just, I scanned in my photos and I just like put up photos. Like, that was it. It was just putting up photos. Where the heck is the photography thing? Oh, here we go. So these are the photos from okay, these are all from my childhood or from high school. And here, I'll just paste this in for you. Classic.html. I remember to put it in the show notes. But yeah, so that first one, the black and white one, was my freshman year. And that was like, those were like the photos we took for the class, for like assignments for the class. I mean, there weren't all of them, but like, yeah, they were like themes for assignments, and then we would take the photos and develop them and stuff.
Pretty cool, dude.
Yeah.
Did you have analytics back then?
Huh?
Did you measure your traffic back then?
No, I don't think so. I don't think we probably had like those hit counters or whatever things. But yeah, I don't remember. I mean, yeah, it was negligible. Yeah, it was, yeah.
So when did you start getting like real traffic onto your site?
That's a good question. My site's never actually, I mean, I would say that my site never actually had a giant growth in traffic. Like the Python tutor has had a, not giant, but a linear growth.
Yeah.
Reasonable linear. But my actual personal site has not really grown even. Like, it doesn't really grow that much. There's some kind of baseline level. I would not say it's like a highly trafficked site or anything, but I would say like probably like at the end of grad school, maybe, because like I wrote a few more things by the end of grad school, and then sometimes things would get on Hacker News and that would get one spike, and then people might go back and stuff. But yeah, it was never a big. Yeah, I never considered that a giant source of traffic.
Oh, okay. But I mean, you've gotten emails for a while, right? Like,
yeah, but that doesn't take a lot of traffic to get emails, I guess, right? But yeah, it's not that much. Yeah, it's not that much, and like it's not that has never been on top of mind for me. Of like, oh wow, I got this highly trafficked website with stuff.
So when you were on Hacker News, it wasn't that big of a deal, or?
Yeah, I mean, like, there was not really any follow-up, right? I mean, it's like, yeah, people put your stuff on there, and then you can either read the comments or not. But like, you have this one-time spike, and it's like, I'm not trying to get anywhere with it, right? It's not like I have a business or something. It's like, oh wow, my thing made in Hacker News, and we got to promote my business and like get people interested in stuff, like a blog about my business and stuff. Like, then you really, get on people's radar. I mean, yeah, the Python tutor was on Hacker News like once or twice, and that helped. And the grind was on Hacker News. That actually gave it a lot of boosts and stuff. So yeah, I think it is, they do have tangible effects, right? Both the Python tutor and the grind were on there. But yeah, it's like random articles get posted on there sometimes, and it's not like there's no actual follow-up with it, right? It's like, all right, that was tight.
Hey, I was gonna ask, in undergrad, did you have like during your master's you had a project, right? Like your thesis, but in undergrad, did you have projects?
Oh, you mean like for research or just outside of?
Just like anything outside of the coursework.
Yeah, so throughout undergrad, I'd always wanted to do coding somehow for stuff. And this kind of dovetails with the photo thing because like I started trying to learn Python to like try to organize some of my photo galleries and like make thumbnails and stuff, right? Do whatever, have this batch of photos. And back then it was all digital by then. And I had all these folders of photos and I wanted to make like these galleries or generate these thumbnails and stuff. So I did some of that toward the end of college, like my senior year. But yeah, during the first 2 or 3 years, it didn't really have anything. I mean, I was in like research labs, so like that took up time. And it was good. That was programming, right? So I made these Palm Pilot apps for like a while and other things. So like that took up the programming time. So like I guess those were projects because they're part of the research projects, but they weren't like outside of school things.
Were those classes or
no? Those were I was always in a research thing somewhere, right? I always had some research lab thing I was doing programming for most of the time.
That's pretty cool, man. So what was the game?
Oh yeah, it was pretty tight. It was like it was a few games. Like it was on these Palm Pilot devices right now. I mean, now we have these iPhones,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it was like these simulations of like Prisoner's Dilemma and like these ecological models. So basically there were these games that would try to like that they would bring into classrooms. So you would have a whole class and like 20 students, kids would all have these Palm Pilots, and then you would pull up this game, which would be like Prisoner's Dilemma or whatever, right? So like you would go up to somebody, and there was like an infrared thingy on the Palm Pilot, and you would go up and you meet up with them, and then you would say like, "Here's the activity. Do you cooperate or defect?" And then you like choose one, and then like you say, "Oh, you get 3 points. You get -1 point," and then you kind of randomly go around the classroom and keep doing that, and then like it was like. And then we would collect these aggregate scores of like how well you did, right? So we wanted to see like it wasn't a research thing, it was more for teaching, right? So like there were activities with it saying like, oh, now you get to like do Prisoner's Dilemma a bunch of times. Do you like always change your strategy? Do you just always defect? It's like that the Nikki case, she had that yeah, they had those simulations right online, right? These explorations online for teaching. And then there was like another one with like there's a few of them. There's one with like a epidemiology one where like someone in the class would have some virus, but you wouldn't know it. So that you would go around like meeting people and like, doing the infrared thing and like interacting with them. And then, after a while, the virus starts spreading and then your screen starts getting sick. And then like you see like how far away these things spread. So it was like these activities for like classroom use with these little devices and like kind of teaching lessons with that.
Oh, but you did that like in a research lab?
Built that was my whole sophomore year I did that. So it was yeah, it was like really weird full circle. So the guy who led that, I mean, he now leads a pretty big lab and they do these kind of educational game sort of things. They make these educational simulate kind of like this. I mean, it's kind of going back to the teaching thing, right? There's this whole school of thought of using technology in the classroom to help students explore scientific ideas, and like these sorts of apps on mobile is one thing, right? So you would program some kind of a concept about population dynamics or ecology or whatever, and then instead of doing a textbook lecture on like predator prey relationships or whatever, you would like have this thing where like half the students were the predator in the population, you have to go around and like and then the prey would have to do whatever, right? So it was like these kind of simulation based learning things that were pretty common back then.
That's pretty cool, man. Was that was it a confidence boost for you to ship something, or?
I guess so. Yeah, I mean, it was cool. And it was like it was interesting because like the guy I worked with, like that was like a very early on that he started as a faculty member. I remember this because like he didn't really have that many students, and we met once a week for like almost an hour, and like in his lab, and like he would go over stuff. I mean, he wouldn't like go over code, but like he would just we would talk a lot about what I've been doing, and like we had a few of these Palm Pilot devices and like software to program them and stuff, and like it was pretty cool. And like now like it's interesting because I actually connected one of my master's students at UCSD with his lab. So he went to like after his master's, he went to Boston for a year to work in his lab, and then applied to grad schools from that year. And he's actually going to go to CMU for the HCI PhD program this coming fall. So like yeah, nowadays like this guy's lab is like gigantic. I mean it's not gigantic, but it's pretty big.
That's pretty cool,
It's
man.
like pretty expansive and it's like pretty big. But like I was there in like the ground floor. I was like the first one.
So what's the device now? Is it a mobile phone or?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. They're probably like Android apps, I'm sure. They also have this like desktop computing things. Like they have these simulation they maintain Star Logo. So it's like a 3D logo environment with turtles and stuff like in a virtual world. It's basically
Oh,
like a Second Life thing with these turtles.
wow. Is that a big thing?
Yeah, it's been going on for a while. Yeah. I mean that project's been going on for quite a while. And like, out of the projects, these educational software projects in academia, there's Star Logo, there's Net Logo, which is I think run out of Northwestern now, and then there's Scratch, which is like the really big one. The
Mm-hmm.
Scratch from the Media Lab is like the biggest one. And there's Scratch, kind of App Inventor, the Star Logo, Net Logo stuff. And there's Alice, which is kind of which, I don't know how actively it's being maintained now, but that was big. And when we were in school, this kind of virtual worlds for teaching programming.
Yeah. Is that still an active field?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I mean, I think it's limited to those groups who are doing it, but yeah, there are people still doing work in those sorts of areas. I mean, I don't really work in that directly myself, but yeah, there's these kind of virtual worlds for teaching programming and kind of math and STEM concepts for targeted for kids. So yeah, I think it's pretty active.
Mm-hmm. Nice, dude. Shoot, all this reminiscing about.
Shoot, yeah, all this reminiscing. Yeah, I don't know. It all goes back to what people are doing in school. But yeah, I don't know. If you're just sitting there grinding.
Hey Phil, did the conversation went a certain way, but did you have some thoughts on the original topic that you wanted to share in terms of kids who are ambitious and kind of go through the grinder and sometimes come out kind of without energy?
I guess that's basically it. Yeah, I mean, like that's kind of it, right? I mean, I guess the thought experiment is, if you're at 22 and you come out and you get a pretty regular, solid job, right? It's like fine, right?
Mhm.
Like, is it better for you to have gone through the grinder from age, 12 to 22 from
Oh,
a really rigorous high school and college, or is it better for you not to have done that? You know, I don't know. I don't have a great sense. Like, if you end up in the same place at 22 or a similar place, is that maybe the argument is that discipline you've built up and that tenacity you've built up from grinding it out will help propel you in your career and try out different things and launch you more. Or the other thought is maybe it didn't really matter because you just went to college, you interviewed for jobs, you got a job.
oh man, so sorry if we're derailing you. That's a really interesting angle because I think it's not obvious what the correct answer is.
Yeah, I don't know.
Um, like I don't have that much experience going through the grinder, but like your experience at MIT, um, like for me going to UC San Diego, like there was coursework, but it wasn't super intense, right? So, like your undergrad at MIT, what makes it intense? Like, do you just cram more in, or you do more practice, or?
I don't know. I that's a good question. Like, I guess like just there's a lot of work maybe, and like the work is non-trivial to get through. Maybe that was it. That like there was a large amount of work, and it wasn't like you're just doing AP US history and you're just memorizing
Yeah,
terms. Like it was like a fair amount of work, and it was like not super obvious what to do. Maybe.
that makes sense. Like if challenge problems are standard, then
Yeah, maybe that's a great way to put it. Like you're only doing the star problems in the back of the book. Maybe. Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
okay. I mean, that sounds pretty good. I mean, up to a limit, right? Like it sounds.
Yeah, and I think people enjoyed it. I mean, like for the most part, right? Yeah. I mean, unless I mean, my recommendation for students going through that is that you just don't want to overload on classes, right? It's like just take the regular course load and just really get into that, and that's good because if you're just one class over, you're just at a tipping point, and you're just like pedaling and treading water,
Yeah. I
and
could
you're
see
just
how
like
you might
pulling
get.
all nighters. Yeah.
You could get in that trap because you're like, oh, normal people can do 4, I can do 5,
Yeah,
right?
then it's over. Yeah, then it's over. I felt pretty strongly about that actually. I felt pretty strongly that there was nothing really to gain by like trying to overload on classes. Like I felt pretty strongly about that.
How'd you have that intuition?
Well, I mean, because I felt like, I felt like just doing the regular course load, and then if you want to do a research thing on the side, that would be really good, right? That is like your 5th class in a way.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So instead of 5 classes and nothing, you do 4 classes and some extracurricular thing, right? I just felt like that just made a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, I too have this intuition that I want my mind to wander at least some amount of time during the day, right?
Yeah.
Like if I'm always doing something, then I'm optimizing for the short term, but I feel like there might be something missing too.
Yeah, so maybe that's it. Maybe that's just to give yourself a little bit of slack. That, yeah, I mean, it's still most of the time that goes back to the beginning of the high school thing, right? If every term you have some interesting thing you're doing that isn't directly relevant at all, maybe, but that's just cool to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Phil, do you have any thoughts on the creative process and like how do you hone that, right? Like,
oh, that's tough. Yeah.
and it's typically I feel like the creative process, when you have your lows, it's kind of tough to kind of get to the other side, right? Like,
this is not in school or in school or just anything.
I feel like in anything, like, research is an obvious one, or like, a business idea that isn't working out initially. Like, how do you?
That's like a total 180. That's like a giant topic change. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that's a recurring theme, which is good. I was just thinking about this earlier of like, it's like I only have a few probably reasonably good ideas a year at most, if any, right? I mean, that's already pretty high end on the high estimate. And like, and the thing is, those often come to me at strange times, right? They come to me and it bursts of inspiration at times where I don't expect, and then I have to write it down or I have to really go on it. But the thing is, consistently those come up because I've been grinding on something related or something kind of different and stuff. So it's like, you don't want to dream in a vacuum, first year grad school, us style,
Yeah.
Well, hey, you don't want to dream in a vacuum. On the other hand, though, there was a lot of unproductive grinding, right? So like, imagine all the APS history stuff or whatever. Like, you can just like spend all your days, shuffling papers around. No matter how much you do that, you're not going to come up with any great insights, right? So it's like, how do you orient yourself so that you are grinding, so you're building up expertise and getting familiarity, but yet you are, it's kind of, you're getting started, but you're in a direction where the insights could potentially come. I think that's very, very hard. I think that's the hardest thing.
Yeah. So you want to grind somewhere where there's interesting stuff adjacent to it, right? And like, but then how do you have taste for what's interesting, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, it's a chicken and egg problem, right? It's like the experience. It gets easier with experience, right? It gets easier with experience, but how do you first get started? And and this is why the apprenticeship model tends to work reasonably well, right? So in the ideal case, you would have a good mentor or set of mentors and you kind of apprentice your way up. But that doesn't work, that doesn't happen for everyone, unfortunately. And how do you step your way up without that, right?
Hey, Phil, sorry, you cut out for a sec.
So I was saying like the apprenticeship model is kind of the standard way of being in a group or being an apprentice and stuff and working your way up. But then not everyone gets that opportunity or has the best, opportunity in that. And how do you deal with that otherwise?
Yeah. Man.
Yeah, that's a grind. Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Like, the other thing is that like I've always been thinking about the childhood thing. Like, maybe something else is just part of childhood too, of just like thinking back on your process that you went through, what you were really passionate about, right? And you don't actually necessarily have to do that thing, but just relate it. So I was really interested in writing and in photography and in just like visual arts and stuff, right? But I never really pursued that much. But going through that creative process, I think, and having the opportunity to do that in certain ways, just I don't know, it just kind of trains that muscle in a way, right?
And how'd you get started with that stuff?
I don't know. It was like really organic, and like maybe that goes back to parenting, and like it goes all the way back, right? That's like I felt like maybe this actually does go back to K-12 and stuff that I haven't thought about. Is that like I felt like I always did reasonably well in school, and like my parents really left me alone because of that, right? And like they were wise enough. I felt like they had enough foresight to know. Maybe this is the whole optimizing thing, right? Like I felt like they had enough wisdom and foresight to know that if I was doing pretty well in school and like on a pretty good path, they shouldn't push me to go, optimize for that one AP class, right? So like they're like, I'm doing fine, pretty well behaved, doing well in the stuff. Everything's going off well, like don't try to like optimize for you more. So then I actually had a lot of free time and just kind of free energy to explore a lot of other things. I mean, it was never that structured, right? Like they never gave me a lot of structure, but also I was an only child, so I had a lot of free time to read and to do stuff. And I thought that was really good. Like I felt like, parents could totally ruin that if like your kid's doing pretty well and sailing pretty smoothly. You're like, oh no, you got to optimize for the next AP class, and then that's just like it derail it.
Yeah, because that's a tricky thing, that the stuff that earns you bragging rights in high school, it doesn't really generalize, right? Like it's kind of an endpoint, and then it's in some ways a dead end.
Yeah, and I think that really is it's like in some ways, that is, snatching defeats from the jaws of victory. Right there, right? Yeah. So I mean that was kind of going back to my childhood. My main memories were that it was that, had I not have done well in school, my parents would probably been on my case a lot more, and I probably wouldn't have had a lot of the freedom to do other stuff. But like that sort of, gave me the freedom in a way, right?
Yeah. And how'd you find interesting stuff like books to read? Like what?
I don't know. I mean, it was never that structured. Like, it wasn't like, I never felt like when I was a kid, I didn't think I developed some skill in depth. Like, there's some people that are like, I've been doing dance since I was 5. And like, I'm like, an Olympian by now or something. I did not have anything where I had some kind of depth, right? It was just whatever I was really interested in computer stuff because I saw my parents had computer stuff and like kind of interested in fiddling around with that. And then just like, I don't know, like, yeah, it was just whatever caught my eye. And but yeah, it was never like, it was just kind of general like nerd stuff from the 90s, right? It was never like anything really specialized.
That's tight, dude, man. Good times.
Yeah, well, what about you? I mean, I guess we'll give you the last word. I mean, your reflections and all of this in the last
I mean, I just remember K through 6 at least. Like I watched a lot of TV and played a lot of video games, right? And I don't know. There's a part of it that's like, I could have used that time more productively, but like it's really tough to, I don't know, it's really tough to intelligently, because you don't want to just, skip grades or whatever, right? Grind super hard and skip grades. And like that doesn't really set you up for, most goals later in life. And so, yeah, I don't know. I mean, my parents had a hands-off approach as well. And, I'm pretty happy that they were like that. But yeah, I don't have any, I haven't thought too hard about it in terms of, what would I change, Yeah,
no, I think so. I mean, I think it's pretty similar in that. Yeah, and that's sort of like going to this conversation of nowadays, especially in these really intense areas, that parents are putting the kids into so many of these activities, right? So both studying type activities of like preparing for tutoring and classes and AP tests and stuff, and also like just structured extracurricular activities that are highly structured. So it's like, really, it's like this full-time job to be a kid, right? In the most extreme case.
Yeah, I guess the one point I want to make is that I'm very thankful that I never went into overdrive, because I think that would have killed my interest in certain things. Whereas,
and I think that's kind of going back to, I mean, again, we don't have kids to interview, but like that's what I'm afraid of, right? That overdrive, that redlining as a kid for those years when nothing you did, in the 4 years of high school, right? Like you're redlining because you got to cram for the next AP test, or you got to study for the SATs or whatever, or like balance doing all these extracurriculars because you need it for college applications or whatever. Like if you think back, after you're an adult, you're like, none of that stuff was that interesting or inherently or specialized. Like, they were just things that a lot of people did. And
I guess if I'm going to redline, I want it for something that's intrinsically interesting, right?
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Not to get straight A's or, get.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I remember that there were times, I mean, I didn't do this a ton, but like there would be times where I would just stay up really late playing on the computer because like I'd install some virus or whatever, and I had to like reformat the computer. And like that I felt like those were like productive uses of time to like,
Yeah.
fiddle around with that stuff and like waste time on that stuff. And like, or staying up late with friends, playing Magic the Gathering or whatever. Like those are like interesting times, right?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I would not want to be like redlining, like feeling like I have to really grind on this because I have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a great, and that's what I'm afraid of, right? Of that, if the baseline level for, the sort of academic achievement now is so much higher than we were back when we were kids, and that really does sap that sort of energy out, right? And because then your days are so structured, you're like, oh, I just got to keep doing this stuff. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Tight, dude.
So any last words before we depart?
Well, maybe next time we could talk about, if you don't think of anything else, just what were we talking about before at the end?
Oh, the redlining of the, not being able to specialize.
Yeah, or never mind. We'll think of something. Yeah.
Shoot, yeah, but I don't know. I feel like, it's something where, I mean, there's so many anecdotes on all sides, right? One of my things I really want to put together is just kind of giving students a perspective of like, all right, here are a bunch of academically high achieving kids 10 years later, 15 years later, right? And like, what advice would they give to their former selves or whatever kind of thing? But the world is so different now and the pressure is so different, but like, yeah, I don't know. And it's I mean, I kind of did that a little bit with this survey I did a few years ago with like the 10 years since college thing, right? That's like,
so
it was kind of like it wasn't since high school, but since college, right? So kind of reflecting back on, you've been 10 years since you've been in college, what do you think was different now and stuff. And I think I really purposely targeted people who were very kind of high achievers, like people went to kind of top schools for undergraduate or graduate school, and kind of seeing what their reflections were. So like something like that, I feel, for high school and stuff, because like, I don't know, like, I mean, again, this is a very first world problem, right? This is a very specialized out. I mean, I guess we talked about this a while earlier, right? It's like, it's not my goal to like be able to reach everybody in high school, especially like the kids who are performing poorly, and those are you could have the most impact, clearly, right? So this is very much a first world problem. This is students who are in very good high schools and academically are in good shape and stuff, and just kind of helping them manage that sort of course load and thinking about strategy moving forward, right? I mean, it's very much a first world problem.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's one that we have a little more knowledge about, right? Like,
right. We can't do Dead Poet Society, right? we can't go and like inspire students in a boarding school or something. But all right. We'll think more about this next time. I mean, you have more of the K-12 exposure than I do at this point, so I think we'll have you have more insights.
All right, cool, man.
All right, man. We'll sign off.